Good morning. So the other day I was sitting in my living room having my morning coffee and going through my normal routine of watching some YouTube videos. And a video came up from Jess over at her Two Wheels. And she was saying that the way that she plans a motorcycle trip is going to change forever. And she has some secret weapon for planning trips. So being a guy that's done a number of videos on the planning process and one that has actually created a class on how I go about planning a trip, well, I decided I wanted to take a look at this because I always like to see how other YouTubers are approaching the process. After watching this video, I was a little surprised to find that Jess's secret weapon for creating road trips is ChatGPT. Yep, the large language model AI search engine. And I said, a little surprised and wondering why you would need to do that. Now, I want to emphasize here that I am not doing this video to rag on Jess or anybody who thinks that using ChatGPT is a good idea, right? That's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing this because I was genuinely interested to see if ChatGPT could actually create a better route plan than I can using just my brain and my experience. So I have a trip that I'm planning for 2025 up to Nova Scotia. It's going to be a 15-day trip, about 2,600 miles in length. And we're going to do the four corners of Nova Scotia, taking all kinds of great back roads and seeing all kinds of great things. And I plotted all of these routes out the normal way that I do it, just going on to my route planning application and starting in one location, figuring out that I want to ride 200 to 300 miles a day, and then finding the best way to get there. It's the way I do all of my trips. So I thought, let's take this trip, we'll put some basic information into ChatGPT and see what it comes up with, and we'll compare its plan to mine. So here, let me read to you the instructions that I gave to ChatGPT. I said, plan a 14-day motorcycle trip from Boston, Massachusetts to Nova Scotia, Canada, and back to Boston, Massachusetts, taking the most scenic routes and stopping at interesting locations with a budget of $200 per day. Now, I could have given it more information. Sure, I could have told it locations I wanted to go and see or the distances I want to travel, but if I already know those things, then why do I need to use ChatGPT? Well, the idea here, at least for me, is to see what it comes up with, what the AI comes up with, as opposed to what I have done on my own. So before we get into the details of the route that ChatGPT created and that I created, let's take a look at the overall budget that the AI created. Accommodations at $100 per night for 14 nights equals $1,400. Meals, $30 per day for 14 days equal $420. Fuel, assuming an average of 250 miles per day and a motorcycle fuel economy of 40 miles per gallon, fuel cost is about $100 per day on average, totaling $1,400. Now, this is way off, and we'll get to that here in a minute. Now, miscellaneous fees, it suggested I might spend about $200, which probably sounds reasonable. ChatGPT says that the total estimate of $3,420 for the entire trip is just over my $200 per day budget, but it could be adjusted by slightly reducing accommodation costs or cutting back on some activities. As I mentioned, that budget that ChatGPT came up with is a little bit off in its allocations, and particularly with the cost of fuel. So let's go over the numbers that I think are more realistic, again, based upon my experience from traveling. Accommodations, it should be more like $150 a night for 13 nights, or $1,950. Meals, probably going to be more like $50 a day for 14 days. That's about $700. Now, fuel, this is where ChatGPT was just way off. The total mileage that ChatGPT says this trip will take is actually 1,616 miles. Now, at 40 miles per gallon for my motorcycle, right, that would come out to be about 40.4 gallons that would be used on this trip. Now, if we can multiply that by an average of $6 per gallon, that is between the US and the Canadian sides, that comes out to be $242.40. So again, with a miscellaneous cost of $200, the total for the trip, at least what I think, should be about $3,092.40. As I said before, ChatGPT dramatically overestimated the fuel cost and underestimated both hotels and food. However, my estimate, even with these changes, is still $328 cheaper than ChatGPT suggested. And again, I think mine is much more realistic. Now let's take a look at the route plans. On day 1, the AI says that I should ride from Boston, Mass. To Portland, Maine, a distance of 108 miles. I should take Route 1 along the coast. Now my plan is to ride from Foxborough, just south of Boston, to Ellsworth, Maine, a distance of 281 miles. But I will run the highway out of Massachusetts and past Portland, Maine, before heading over to Route 1 along the coast. In fairness to the AI here, I certainly don't want to hurt its feelings, but I did tell it to take scenic roads. So going on Route 1 north of Boston would make sense according to the instructions that I gave it. However, ChatGPT does not have my experience or knowledge that going on Route 1 through north of Boston and into New Hampshire is pretty congested and something that you really don't want to do. So I'm going to stick to the highway, right? And again, go farther, about twice as far as ChatGPT suggests on the first day. Now let's take a look at day 2, 3, and 4. And this is where my plans and the plans of the AI really diverge. On day 2, the AI says I should drive from Portland, Maine to Bar Harbor, Maine, about a 175-mile distance. On day 3, I should then ride from Bar Harbor to St. John, New Brunswick, about 180 miles. Now, as I measure it, that's actually 205 miles. On day 4, we should ride then from St. John, New Brunswick to Moncton, New Brunswick, only about 80 miles. What I'm actually going to do is cover all of that distance in one day. I'm going to ride from Ellsworth, Maine to Moncton, New Brunswick, a total of 325 miles. Now, I'm not going to waste my time getting up there, right? Moncton is going to be the starting location before crossing over into Nova Scotia. ChatGPT, well, it takes its time to get up there. And it really doesn't suggest any better routes than I have picked. In fact, I don't think they're as good. So here's the basic route from the AI versus mine. Now, as I said, the main difference is that I do this total distance from Bar Harbor to Moncton in one day. Now, I also take a more southerly and more scenic route heading into Moncton. Now let's look at day 5 of ChatGPT's plan. It says I should ride from Moncton, New Brunswick to Halifax, Nova Scotia, a distance of about 120 miles, again that I measure at 160 miles. On day 5, the AI gets us to Halifax in a very direct way. On the other hand, I'll get there on day 6 after riding Cape Breton Island and the Cabot Trail. I also take a much more scenic and southerly route along the coast. After this, the AI takes me up to the Cabot Trail, although via a more direct route. While my plans, I go more west, and I explore the Halifax area before heading to Digby and Yarmouth to catch the ferry home. In 14 days, ChatGPT doesn't go any further west than Halifax, although it does suggest Prince Edward Island, something I was not planning to add to this trip. So at this point, I'm going to stop the comparison because I think it's pretty evident at the differences from what the AI created and what I created. ChatGPT has no idea how long or how far motorcyclists like to ride in any given day. And of course that varies, but the AI obviously thinks that we want to ride very short distances. In addition, what ChatGPT thinks is a great scenic road is far different from what I think is a great scenic road. Now, I will point out one weird thing that ChatGPT suggested. On the way home on day 10, it wanted me to ride from Charlottetown, PEI to St. Andrews, New Brunswick, a distance it suggests is about 140 miles. However, when I plot this out, the actual distance is 262 miles. Another weird thing is that after riding to St. Andrews, which is on the US-Canadian border, ChatGPT tells me to ride north to Fredericton, a distance of about 95 miles. The following day on day 12, the AI wants me to cross back into the United States and then head down 95 to Bangor. I'm not really sure what ChatGPT is trying to do here. I have a feeling it made a mistake. It probably wanted me to go to Fredericton first and then down to St. Andrews. That would make a lot more sense. But for whatever reason, it's got me going to St. Andrews, and it has the distance wrong going to St. Andrews by quite a ways. So I guess it just goes to show you that the AI is not perfect. So now let's look at the bottom line to this comparison, again, at least for me. ChatGPT was able to create at least a basic itinerary to go up to Nova Scotia from Boston, Massachusetts. However, as I said, it doesn't really understand how far motorcyclists like to travel in a day, and it really doesn't understand what a great scenic road is. I'm sure that it's going out and looking for what other people have done out there, and now it's reporting those findings back, right, in its suggested itinerary. But the difference between what I really want to do and what ChatGPT comes up with is so great that I don't really think that it's a good place to start. I know some people will think that this is a good starting point, but as I just said, the changes that I have to make to really create the route and the trip that I want to are just so great it doesn't make any sense to use it as a starting point. And as I said before, I could of course give it more information. I could tell it the places that I want to go see. I could tell it the roads that I want to ride. I could tell it how far I want it to ride. But if I know all of that information and I have it up here in my head, what's the point of using the AI tool? I mean, you're essentially then making it a glorified stenographer. It's really not giving me any suggestions that are better than what I can come up with myself. Now, of course, I do come from a different generation than the millennial riders out there. I didn't grow up looking for the latest hacks, right, or cheat codes, right? I learned to do things myself. I made mistakes. I corrected those mistakes. I learned. I got better. Again, I wasn't going out and looking for a tool, a program, or again, other people to give me the ideas. That's just the way that we grew up. We didn't have computers. We didn't have cell phones. And again, I know that all makes me sound really old and bitchy, but it's all true, right? We grew up differently. We learn to do things differently. So I guess for me, you can go out and use ChatGPT to create your itinerary if you want. It's perfectly fine. However, I would suggest to you that it is never, at least not in my lifetime anyway, what's left of it, going to be able to create a better trip than I can. Maybe sometime in the future it will be able to do that. And I can also guarantee that anything that ChatGPT creates is not going to be as good and as gratifying as if you create it yourself, right? Because you're going to create exactly what you want, right? You're not going to be dependent upon what some machine language thinks or what other people think, right? You're going to go out and do it yourself, and that just is everything, right? That's what being a solo motorcyclist is about, doing it for yourself, not relying on all these other people. But what do I know? I'm just an old guy who, as I said, didn't grow up with all of this technology. Even though I do use it every day, I made a living at it for more than 20 years. So, I don't know. Take it for what it's worth. All right, guys, we'll talk to you later. Hopefully, we'll get out there and ride, at least in a couple of more months. We got snow coming tonight. But if you're out there riding, do it safely, and of course, keep squeezing your lemon.